Okay, let's unpack this. Welcome back to the deep dive.
Great to be here.
Today, we're here to do what we do best. Take a whole stack of source materials, articles, manuals, even personal stories, and just distill them into the most efficient, insightful session of knowledge you can get.
Yeah, filter out all the noise.
Exactly. And our mission today is all about the water. We're looking at summer, sailing, swimming. It was all packaged initially as like a language lesson.
Right, but when you look closer, it's so much more. We've got this fascinating collection today. I mean, everything from technical vocabulary lists and dialogue transcripts to a really dramatic, real-life family anecdote.
And that's the aha moment, isn't it? You start with these simple definitions and you realize they're just the tip of the iceberg. They're hiding these deep concepts in physics, logistics, even human drama.
It's a perfect example of how language and technical knowledge intersect. We're taking all these technical details and sort of putting them in a context that makes sense.
Exactly. We're moving way past this is a boat or this is how you float. We are extracting the specific practical truths of being on the water. We've got vocab about propulsion and safety, analysis of physical movement, and two very different stories.
One about a fictional shark scare.
Yes, and one about a very real, very expensive boat collision that needed scuba divers to fix.
So these sources give us that perfect intersection of, the technical requirement and the casual application. We're really looking at the foundational knowledge you need for confidence and competence out there in these watery environments.
So here's our core mission for this deep dive. What truly critical insights can we pull from these, seemingly simple definitions? What can they tell us about the physics, the inherent drama, and the complex practical reality of moving on or in the water?
We're turning a vocabulary preview into a masterclass on hydrodynamics and nautical safety.
Let's do it. So let's begin with the concept that really anchors the first part of our source material. Sailing. It brings up all these images of freedom, blue water, the whole thing. But the technical definition is much, much more rigorous than just taking a boat out.
That's absolutely right. The core definition the source gives us for sailing, as the verb, the activity, is traveling in a boat entirely without an engine.
That's the key part, no engine.
It's a foundational distinction in the world of watercraft. It's not motorboating. You are relying 100% on the wind for propulsion.
That seems almost poetic, this reliance on the wind. But let's get into the mechanics of it. What makes that a deep dive worthy definition? I mean, it points to some underlying physics, right?
It really does. The technical nature of a sailboat, it all revolves around generating lift.
Lift, like an airplane wing.
Exactly like an airplane wing, the same aerodynamic principle that keeps a plane in the air. The sail is effectively a curved vertical wing. You angle it to the wind, and the air that flows over the curved outer side has to travel farther, so it goes faster.
Okay, faster on the outside, slower on the inside.
And that creates a pressure differential. Lower pressure on the outside, higher pressure on the inside. That pressure difference translates into a forward force. It literally pulls the boat forward.
So you're not just being pushed downwind like a leaf on a palm.
Not at all.
Yeah.
That's a huge misconception. You're being pulled through the water. And sometimes you can even go faster than the wind itself.
Wow. So it's not passive at all. It's an active transformation of this horizontal force into forward movement. And this is why sailors are always, tacking and jibing. They're constantly adjusting the sails angle.
Constantly. They're maximizing that lift. And this is why the sailboat itself embodies this purity of movement. The boat and its keel, that big, heavy blade under the water, have to balance the force from the wind against the resistance of the water.
The keel is what keeps it from just sliding sideways.
Precisely. If you didn't have that heavy opposing force from the keel, the wind would just push you sideways. The boat is this carefully engineered compromise between aerodynamics and hydrodynamics.
That's a fantastic way to put it. Okay, so whether you've successfully harnessed the wind or you've decided, hey, it's time to stop for lunch, you need the essential safety tool. The anchor.
The anchor.
And the source material really highlights this word, not just for its function, but for its unusual linguistic structure.
Well, the anchor is vital. It's a mechanism of deliberate, informed stoppage. As a noun, the anchor is the physical hardware. It's the hook, usually heavy metal, designed to dig into the seabed or the lake bottom.
And it's not just about weight, is it?
No, not at all. Its technical function isn't just weight, it's about establishing a mechanical hold through friction and suction. Or, with modern designs like a Danforth or a CQR anchor, it's about digging deep and converting the boat's drag into setting force. It digs itself in deeper.
And then we have the action, to anchor the boat. That's the whole process of deploying it to keep the boat stationary. But there's a critical technical element here called the scope. It's not enough just to drop the anchor over the side, is it?
Absolutely not. And this is where so many amateur mistakes happen. The technical reality of anchoring is all about the scope.
Okay, so break that down for us. What is scope?
Scope is the ratio of your anchor rode, that's the rope or chain to the depth of the water, plus the freeboard, which is just the height of your boat deck above the water.
A ratio. So how much rope for how much depth?
For a safe, secure hold, you typically need a scope of at least 5-to-1 or even 7-to-1 in rougher conditions. So that means if the water is 10 feet deep, you need to let out 50 to 70 feet of line.
That makes perfect sense. If you just drop it straight down, any pull from the boat would just lift it straight up. It wouldn't dig in.
Exactly. The long scope allows the line to lie flatter along the bottom, which keeps the anchor pulled horizontally into the seabed. That maximizes its holding power. It's a subtle piece of physics that makes the difference between a secure night's sleep and waking up on the rocks.
And this brings us back to that fascinating linguistic point, the source material's flag, the spelling and the pronunciation, A-N-C-H-O-R.
Right, the chi sound. It's not pronounced anchor, it's anchor.
This is one of those great English exceptions. Why does English do this? Why is it a K sound?
It's all in its etymology. The word comes to English through Old English from the Latin ancora, which itself came from the Greek word anchora.
Ah, so a Greek root.
And that Greek root used a kappa sound, a hard K sound. And that sound carried all the way through into the English pronunciation, completely bypassing the typical K sound you might get from, say, French-derived words like chef.
So it's like a linguistic fossil. It proves the word has been part of nautical language for millennia.
It's firmly established.
So if you're looking for a quick signal that someone is truly familiar with the nautical world, asking them to pronounce that word is a pretty good litmus test.
It's a good one. And the source gave that critical constraint example. We can't anchor here because there are power lines under the water.
That one sentence is just packed with practical knowledge, isn't it?
It really is. It underscores that anchoring is an informed decision. You have to use your navigation charts. You have to be aware of the environment. You have to think about safety. You can't just stop anywhere.
You have to consider depth, what the seabed is made of, and, crucially, underwater hazards like cables or pipes or reefs that could get tangled in your gear.
Precisely.
That sets the stage perfectly. So our two friends in the dialogue have successfully sailed. They've shown technical competence by safely anchoring the boat. And now the scene shifts. The boat is secure. The water looks inviting.
They decide to take a dip.
And now the focus moves from harnessing the wind to mastering the internal mechanics of human movement in the water. Okay, so we're in the water. The source materials very efficiently cover a whole spectrum of swimming ability, starting with the most basic, functional, and I think fascinatingly named stroke, doggy paddling.
The doggy paddle is so critical because it represents our instinctive, almost mammalian response to being submerged. The source is right to emphasize the distinction. It is explicitly not considered a proper or Olympic swimming style.
No, definitely not. But the biomechanics of it are so interesting. The description is vivid, quick movement of hands in front, and the legs are just all over the place.
I love that description. It's so accurate. It's highly inefficient for moving forward, but it's pure, immediate function.
What is that function then?
Its function is minimal effort for maximal buoyancy maintenance. That's it. The doggy paddle relies on this constant, small-scale downward push of the hands and feet just to counteract gravity. The legs are all over the place because they aren't generating directional thrust. They're just churning up the water enough to keep the hips from sinking.
So it's a zero locomotion, high survival stroke.
Exactly. It's the language of initial safety. And the fact that we use it as both a noun and a verb, you perform the doggy paddle or you are doggy paddling, that just shows how integrated this concept is into our fundamental understanding of being in the water.
So it's the universal baseline. But the conversation in the source quickly shifts to the first truly technical style, the breaststroke. This is often the first real stroke people learn because you can keep your head up easily, but the source notes the difficulty. It compares it to swimming like a frog.
And that frog analogy is spot on, especially for the power generation. The defining feature of the breaststroke is the whip kick or the frog kick.
Okay, the whip kick.
It's this powerful, circular, simultaneous movement of both legs. The feet push the water backward and inward. Biomechanically, that requires significant hip flexor and adductor strength. It's very effective, but it's also a high-resistance movement.
And the arm movement. The source describes it as completing half circles in front.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. The arm action is a simultaneous pull and sweep. The hands move together, they push outward and downward to sort of grab a big volume of water, and then they sweep back in toward the chest.
And that creates the forward thrust.
A powerful forward thrust right before they recover forward again. But the key technical challenge of the breaststroke, and what makes it so tiring, is the timing. It's a glide-based stroke. You have to glide after the power phase before you start the next cycle.
Ah, I see. Now, I have to ask, if the source acknowledges that the stroke can be tiring, why would competitive swimmers choose it? I mean, isn't it objectively slower than the front crawl?
That's a great question, and it really shows why context is everything.
Yeah.
Yes, it is the slowest of the 4 competitive strokes.
Freestyle, backstroke, butterfly, breaststroke.
Right. But it's the only one of those 4 where the competitor is allowed to recover their arms entirely underwater and where their head has to break the surface on every single cycle. And more importantly, it's just incredibly demanding in terms of synchronization and raw power.
So its difficulty comes from the required effort and coordination, not just its absolute speed. But the payoff is that it's the most effective stroke for seeing where you're going.
Exactly. Which is why it's excellent for open water rescue or even just recreational swimming, where being able to see is important. It's a stroke of high exertion and high awareness.
Okay, now let's contrast that effort with the third stroke mentioned, which the character in the dialogue switches to specifically because, as they said, it's easier, the backstroke.
The relaxation stroke.
It seems like it. The backstroke fundamentally changes the relationship between the swimmer and the water, doesn't it? By lying completely on your back, buoyancy is maximized.
And breathing becomes effortless and continuous. That reduces a lot of the anxiety that people have with water immersion. That's why it feels so much easier.
So biomechanically, how does it generate propulsion? It doesn't have that powerful kick of the breaststroke or the continuous pull of the crawl.
It relies on a perpetual, alternating recovery and pull. The arm movement is this continuous circular rotation. One arm is recovering over your head, while the other one is pulling beneath the water, starting with a catch and then pressing the water toward your feet.
So it's a constant alternating rhythm that maintains momentum. The source describes the hands going up and down behind the swimmer in a circular motion, which is a pretty good way to visualize it.
It's a good descriptive proxy for the alternating cycles, yeah.
And the leg movement here is a flutter kick, right? Totally different from the whip kick of the breaststroke.
Yes, the leg movement is a constant, narrow flutter kick, often called the 6-beat kick. And its primary function isn't necessarily speed, it's stability.
Stability.
It keeps your body aligned and stops your hips from dropping, which would just create a ton of drag.
Yeah.
The backstroke is arguably the most efficient stroke for sustained, moderate leisure swimming because of that easy breathing and the continuous low-resistance body position.
So within just 3 short definitions, doggy paddling, breaststroke, and backstroke, we've analyzed a whole spectrum. We've gone from instinctual survival to synchronized, high effort, and finally, to sustained, relaxed efficiency.
It just shows how language about movement is inherently loaded with all this technical detail.
Absolutely. Okay, so moving from physical technique to linguistic technique, the source materials highlight these phrases that immediately make you sound more fluent. These aren't technical terms, but they are the natural textural part of English speech.
And the first phrase is directly related to the activity we were just talking about, take a dip.
This simple 3-word phrase, it carries a very specific expectation. It defines the action to have a quick swim. It suggests spontaneity, leisure, and brevity.
It's an invitation to a casual, refreshing immersion.
Exactly. And the source material is great because it defines the boundaries. You can take a dip in a pool, a lake, or the ocean. But the hilarious, specific, negative example is crucial. You generally do not use this phrase for the bathtub.
Which is such a funny image.
The host in the source adds that fantastic qualifier, unless the tub is really, really, really big.
Go try that.
What that really highlights is that dip implies a body of water that's large enough to be recreational and refreshing. The primary motivation is cooling off or momentary enjoyment, not, routine hygiene.
It's a subtle but really important contextual constraint. It just shows the sophistication of seemingly simple phrases.
It really does. Okay, next we move into the realm of time for a little while. The source materials describe this phrase as being used, 500 times a day, which just suggests how common it is.
Its function is crucial. It's a linguistic softener. It defines a duration for a short, non-committal time. It's the difference between saying, I will sit down for 10 minutes, which is very precise and fixed.
And saying, I will sit down for a little while, which is flexible, natural, less pressured.
Exactly.
But why is this specific phrasing, for a little while, such a hallmark of fluency? Why not just say, for a short time?
Because for a little while carries a conversational rhythm and cadence that's just deeply idiomatic to English. It implies a duration that's manageable, non-disruptive, and often comforting.
Comforting. How so?
Well, think of the examples they gave. Using it for rest, I'm just going to sit down for a little while. Or for the duration of pain, it will only hurt for a little while. In that second example, it functions as emotional reassurance. It's suggesting the pain is temporary and small.
The flexibility is remarkable. We saw it applied to resting, pain, playing tennis, sleeping. It transforms a simple duration marker into this conversational tool that signals empathy or casualness or ease.
It connects ideas seamlessly. You're not just marking time. You're setting an expectation for the relationship between time and effort. If you ask someone to play tennis for a short time, it sounds like you're minimizing the activity.
Right.
But if you ask them to play tennis for a little while, it sounds like an easy, enjoyable invitation.
That's a great distinction. Finally, the phrase that brings us back to high-stakes motion, straight towards. This composite phrase becomes central to the fictional drama we encounter, and it defines direction with, well, terrifying clarity.
We really need to analyze the intensity of this phrase. Straight means directly, in an uninterrupted line. It implies a single purpose, zero deviation.
And towards adds the relational part. It defines the target.
When you combine them, straight towards conveys this inexorable, focused trajectory.
And I think the critique rightly noted that we shouldn't really belabor the definitions of straight or towards on their own. It's the impact of the composite phrase that matters.
And the impact is psychological and physical. When you say a threat is coming straight towards you, it means you are the target. There is no time for deviation or hesitation. It strips away all uncertainty about the object's intent.
And the source material uses this in the most dramatic way possible. The shark is coming straight towards me.
Oh.
That isn't a shark just swimming parallel to the boat. That is a line of attack. The physics of that motion, a creature moving linearly and rapidly, is just terrifyingly simple.
But as we noted, its use goes far beyond danger. It can describe any focused, linear motivation. The source is a funny example, going straight towards the fridge after work.
I can relate to that.
It uses the exact same psychological intensity, a mission-oriented path driven by hunger, just applied to a mundane event. The function of the phrase is identical, to find the most direct, intentional route.
It's the linguistic tool for describing the shortest distance between 2 points, whether that's a shark and a swimmer or you and a cold drink. That's a powerful fluency marker.
Definitely.
Okay, now that we've mastered the nuances of these phrases, we have to return to the dialogue climax where straight towards is deployed. The tension shifts from leisure to just sheer panic in an instant.
The scene uses that leisure context we just established to maximize the sudden shock. One minute they're talking about how easy the backstroke is. The next, the cry of, "I see a shark, help me," just shatters the piece.
And the use of that linear phrase, "the shark is coming straight towards me," coupled with the immediate chilling confirmation from the friend. It's right under you, Kathy. It forces you to imagine the perspective from above and below the water at the same time. It's terrifying.
The host's reaction in the source materials is classic speculation about minimizing the threat. Well, maybe it was a dolphin, or the heroic fantasy of punch the shark.
Right.
And this just highlights the disconnect between the real risks of open water and the dramatic stories we impose on them. In reality, any sudden, unidentified object in the water is a serious safety concern, whether it's a shark, a log, or a dolphin.
And that's the reality of the deep dive, recognizing the difference between fictional danger and practical risk assessment. So, having acknowledged that sudden danger, let's quickly broaden our view of the other necessary summer water terminology that the source materials also give us.
Okay. We've got several basic items and actions from the audio review. They're crucial for completeness, but we should probably address them with context, not just simple definitions.
Good call. Let's start with the towel. We all know what a towel is, but in this context, the soft cloth for drying after swimming, what's the deeper relevance?
The relevance is the transition from water to land, from wet to dry, and the logistics of recreation. A successful water outing is measured by safety and comfortable recovery. The towel is the simplest tool for preventing hypothermia or just discomfort after you get out, especially when sailing, where the temperature difference between the air and the water can be significant.
So it's a necessary piece of logistical equipment.
It really is.
Next, tan, to lie in the sun to make skin more brown. Again, a simple definition, but let's pivot to the implication.
The implication here, especially for a modern audience, is safety. The act of tanning today is inextricably linked to managing solar exposure. What the dictionary defines as tanning, a modern water sports person defines as UV radiation management.
So the knowledge derived from this simple word isn't about skin color, it's about proper use of sunscreen and time management to avoid sun damage.
It's an updated context for a timeless summer activity.
Okay, and then the action of dive, to jump into the water head first. How does this differ technically from just taking a dip?
Diving implies a controlled, specific entry that uses gravity and momentum. It requires depth clearance, spatial awareness, you have to know what you're diving into, and physical technique to enter cleanly. Taking a dip is passive, diving is active, and requires a much higher degree of risk assessment about the environment below the surface.
Right, you have to know it's deep enough.
You really do.
Finally, the fantastic cross-cultural vocabulary nugget. The distinction in swimwear terminology between American and British English.
This is a golden insight for fluency. American English consistently uses the term swimsuit. Simple, descriptive of its function.
But the source highlights the British English equivalent, swimming costume. The use of costume is so interesting. It implies an item worn for a specific, often recreational role or performance.
It's a subtle but distinct cultural choice in terminology, isn't it? It just reminds us that even with the most common objects like clothing, regional dialects maintain significant variation. Understanding that difference is a step toward true cultural literacy, not just linguistic mastery.
That wraps up our conceptual vocabulary. We've moved from the technical challenges of sailing and swimming mechanics to conversational fluency and safety context. Now we use all this gathered knowledge to analyze the culmination of the source material. A costly, dramatic, real-world story about nautical failure and expensive recovery.
Right, this extended anecdote provides such a critical counterpoint to the fictional drama of the shark scare. This story centers on a grandfather, his family, and a deeply ingrained lake tradition. And it illustrates how routine familiarity can sometimes blind us to inherent risk.
So let's establish the scene. A family spending every summer on a specific lake, and it's a very defined geography. A small family house on a small island, and cousins residing on another small island nearby.
And this geography dictates the routine. Families were frequently traveling back and forth between the islands for dinner, alternating houses every night. So boat travel becomes less of a structured event and more like, well, like driving your car down the street. It's daily transit.
And this normalized transit leads directly to the core failure and the midnight collision. The grandfather decides to go pick up his wife late at night from the cousin's house. But here is the critical red flag detail from the source. It was dark, and the boat had no light.
That absence of light is the entire accident right there. Legally and practically, operating any vessel at night without proper navigation lights, red on the port side, green on starboard, white on the back, is a catastrophic failure of basic safety protocol.
It makes the boat functionally invisible.
Completely invisible to other operators.
So he was driving straight towards the island. There's our phrase again, that linear, focused direction. But his cousin, who was also out in his own boat, drives directly into him.
This wasn't a slow scrape. This was a high-impact, direct collision caused by the zero visibility.
The collision resulted in dramatic, immediate physical consequences. The grandfather's boat flipped over, it turned completely upside down, and he was thrown into the water.
The source confirms he was physically okay, which is a miracle, but the shock and the immediate danger of being submerged in a dark lake after a collision like that are significant.
But the long-term cost wasn't personal injury, it was material. The boat remained floating upside down, but the heavy mechanical core, the engine, it separated and fell down to the bottom of the lake.
And this detail is the crucial link to the financial and technical logistics of water operations. The engine is the single heaviest, most complex, and most expensive part of a non-sailing boat. Once it's submerged, it doesn't just need drying out.
No.
It needs immediate salvage and likely a complete replacement, or at least a very costly professional overhaul to prevent total corrosion.
So the family is now faced with this high-value piece of equipment just sitting at the bottom of the lake, which leads to the highly specific technical solution, the recovery effort.
This solution really reveals the complexity of marine recovery. They had to come back the next morning and hire scuba divers to go to the bottom of the lake to find and retrieve the sunken engine.
This is an official salvage operation.
A small-scale one, but yes, It's salvage.
I want to focus on the cost implications of that. This wasn't just a friendly favor. Hiring professional, insured scuba salvage divers. That involves mobilization fees, specialized lift bags, hourly rates for what is dangerous underwater work.
It turns a simple accident into a significant financial event.
It connects directly back to our initial discussion on sailing, doesn't it? We saw the elegance of wind power, low cost, pure physics.
Yeah,
Here, we see the consequence of relying on mechanical power.
absolutely. The engine gives you speed and convenience, but that convenience comes with immense liability and these complex recovery requirements when it fails or is damaged. A snapped mast on a sailboat is repairable. A sunken engine often requires specialized salvage and total replacement.
And this reliance on specialized intervention, the scuba divers, it just underscores that water activities, even recreational ones, are governed by professional logistics when things go wrong.
Exactly. It shows the technical requirements for recovery are often far higher than the requirements for operation. Even on a small lake, dropping an engine requires commercial-level underwater salvage expertise.
And the lasting impression of this anecdote is what makes it such a powerful narrative anchor. The grandfather was really angry about this and tells the story every single year.
It becomes a foundational family myth, an annual warning. It solidifies the idea that even in the most familiar, routine environment, your own family lake, the line between leisure and disaster is incredibly thin. The anger isn't just about the money.
No, it's about the principle.
It's about the avoidable failure of basic safety procedures, like running a boat without lights in the dark.
It's a classic example of how, in the nautical world, competence is required 100% of the time, even when you're just taking a dip or driving home from dinner.
And that competence extends to knowing when you need outside expertise, like those scuba divers. The technical knowledge we've extracted today is just as relevant to the survival of the grandfather's engine as it is to the fictional swimmer escaping the shark.
What a journey. We started with the foundational physics of sailing, analyzing how a sail generates lift against the drag of the keel. We then dove into the biomechanics of swimming strokes, distinguishing the high effort of the breaststroke from the leisure efficiency of the backstroke.
And we moved into the realm of conversational fluency, dissecting phrases like "for a little while" and the inexorable focus of "straight towards." And finally, we synthesized all that knowledge through these dramatic narratives, comparing the theoretical danger of a shark with the very real, very costly logistics of a dark night collision and the scuba recovery effort that followed.
We've seen how specific vocabulary anchors us, and I will use that pun again intentionally, in the world of water sports. The knowledge we've extracted today shows that everything, from the rhythmic necessity of breathing during a crawl to the technical constraints of deploying an anchor, it all hides layers of operational and narrative detail.
It's never just a boat ride. It's a constant interaction with physics and risk.
It is. We observed two different types of risk today. There was the sudden, dramatic, and often low probability risk, like the shark scare.
And then there was the insidious high-cost risk caused by human error and complacency, the unlit boat collision and the sunken engine.
Which leaves us with a provocative final question for you to mull over. We learned about the fundamental difference between the pure reliance on natural forces, like sailing with the wind, and the reliance on complex mechanical power, like the grandfather's engine. When you apply this to your own life, your career, your projects, your relationships, where are you relying purely on natural momentum and skill, and where are you depending on complex, expensive mechanical systems?
And most importantly, what are you relying on that you haven't fully checked for hidden dangers, like a small boat driving without lights in the dark?
Think about that, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.